The Xylos, nine intergalactic courthouse was renowned throughout the cosmos for its efficiency and cold logic. Its reputation for fairness and procedural precision had made it a model for judicial systems across 17 galaxies. At the heart of this stellar reputation stood Senior Judge Kthar, a silicon-based entity famous for unshakable calm and superior data processing abilities. In over 500 cycles of service, Judge Kthar had never once deviated from perfect judicial composure. Until humans entered the picture. The case that would forever change intergalactic judicial protocol seemed simple enough at first glance. Brenda Jones, an Earth tourist visiting the pleasure moons of Glorpia Prime, stood accused by the Glorpian Tourism Consortium of desecration of sacred holiday experiences and collective emotional contamination. The charges seemed oddly nebulous by Earth standards, but were considered quite serious under Glorpian law, which treated emotional harmony as the foundation of social order. The trial began routinely enough. The courthouse hummed with the familiar background noise of translation devices and atmosphere regulators. The bailiff, a massive but gentle Zorpian named Glonk, stood at attention beside the crystalline bench. Judge Kthar's silicon form shimmered slightly as the entity reviewed the case files through direct data absorption. Brenda Jones entered the courtroom with remarkable confidence for someone facing charges that could result in significant financial penalties and a permanent ban from all Glorpian territories. She smiled broadly at everyone, which immediately set the Glorpian plaintiffs on edge. Their species communicated primarily through subtle emotional synchronization, and such blatant facial contortions were considered intrusive at best. As the proceedings began, Kthar's resonant voice echoed through the chamber. The court acknowledges the presence of Earth citizen Brenda Jones and representatives of the Glorpian Tourism Consortium. Let the proceedings. Before Kthar could finish, Brenda Jones raised her hand energetically. Your Honor, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but I just realized today is a very special day, and I simply must acknowledge it. Judge Kthar paused, a microsecond delay that, for the usually instantaneous judge, might as well have been an eternity of confusion. Earth citizen Jones, this court does not recognize interruptions based on subjective temporal significance. Oh, but this isn't subjective at all. Brenda insisted cheerfully. She reached into her handbag, causing Bailiff Glonk to twitch nervously, and pulled out a small robotic chihuahua. Today is Tesla's activation anniversary. He's basically family, and on Earth we celebrate birthdays. Before anyone could respond, Brenda produced a small music player and pressed a button. Instantly, Earth pop music blasted through the acoustically perfect courtroom at a volume that made the Glorpians vibrate in distress. Their translucent bodies began pulsing with alarming colors that signaled extreme emotional disturbance. Brenda, oblivious to the chaos unfolding, pulled out paper party horns and began blowing them enthusiastically. The sharp, sudden blasts of noise caused Bailiff Glonk to convulse slightly, his species being particularly sensitive to unexpected auditory stimuli. The final straw came when Brenda approached the bench, conical party hat in hand, attempting to place it atop Judge Kthar's crystalline structure. Come on, Your Honor. Everyone needs to wear a party hat at a birthday celebration. Judge Kthar, confronted with this utterly incomprehensible behavior, experienced something unprecedented in half a millennium of judicial service: a system crash. The silicon-based entity froze, internal processes overwhelmed by the illogical input. Error messages cascaded through Kthar's consciousness as the judge attempted to categorize and respond to Brenda's actions within the framework of known courtroom protocols. The Glorpians, meanwhile, had entered a state of collective spiritual interference, their normally synchronized emotional fields fragmented by the chaos of human celebration. Several began emitting high-pitched harmonic wails that shattered two light fixtures. Bailiff Glonk, fighting through his sensory overload, managed to activate the emergency protocol button. The music abruptly cut off as the courtroom security system engaged, though this did little to address the damage already done. The trial was indefinitely postponed. After a hastily convened emergency session of judicial administrators, Brenda Jones received a minor fine for level Gamma courtroom protocol violations, but was otherwise released. No one quite knew how to categorize her behavior under galactic law, as surprise birthday party for a robotic pet had never been anticipated by the legal co-drafters. Glonk submitted retirement paperwork immediately after the incident, citing mammal-induced psychological trauma with conical object complications. The gentle Zorpian relocated to a quiet monastery on a moon with strict noise regulations and a complete ban on Earth visitors. Judge Kthar required 3 days of intensive data defragmentation before returning to duty. News of what became known as the surprise party incident spread rapidly through galactic judicial circles. Judges across multiple systems began expressing concern about presiding over human cases. The unpredictability factor alone made many judicial entities uncomfortable, but the potential for sensory and logical disruption created genuine anxiety throughout the system. It wasn't long before another incident reinforced these concerns. Dave Miller, an Earth engineer working on interspecies space station, found himself charged with illegal use of sonic weaponry and threatening community peace. The charges stemmed from complaints filed by several non-human residents of the station, where Miller had been contracted to upgrade environmental systems. The case was assigned to Judge Shimmer, a crystalline entity known for precise interpretation of technical regulations. Given the concerns raised by the Kthar incident, extra precautions were taken. Sound-dampening fields were installed around the human's position in court, and Bailiff Drex, a four-armed Fleepian chosen for the reputation for caution and quick reflexes, stood at alert. "Mr. Miller," Judge Shimmer began, "you stand accused of deploying sonic weaponry in a shared habitat. How do you plead?" Dave Miller looked genuinely confused. "Not guilty, Your Honor. I've never possessed any sonic weapons. I'm just an environmental systems engineer." The prosecutor, a Vrieg known for their extraordinarily sensitive hearing, stepped forward. The evidence clearly shows that the accused did, on no fewer than 6 occasions, emit harmful sonic patterns in public bathing facilities, causing extreme distress to multiple species. "What? I was just singing in the shower," Dave protested. "It's an Earth custom." Judge Shimmer's crystalline form vibrated slightly in confusion. "Clarify this singing activity." "It's easier if I demonstrate," Dave offered helpfully. "It's just vocalizing tunes for personal enjoyment. Like this." Before anyone could stop him, Dave Miller launched into an enthusiastic rendition of a classic rock opera chorus, hitting impressively high notes with considerable volume. The effects were immediate and catastrophic. The jury, composed of gaseous Plorgian entities, experienced molecular excitation from the sound waves. They began oscillating wildly and glowing with increasing intensity, interfering with sensitive equipment throughout the courtroom. The Vrieg prosecutor, whose hearing was evolved to detect sound variations of microscopic amplitude, immediately lost consciousness from auditory overload. Bailiff Drex, startled by the sudden chaos, reflexively reached for all 4 emergency buttons simultaneously, one of which activated the acoustical foam emergency fire suppression system. Within seconds, the courtroom was filled with sound-dampening foam, effectively silencing Dave's impromptu performance, but also encasing Judge Shimmer in a material that severely disrupted the judge's crystalline communication abilities. When order was finally restored hours later, Judge Shimmer had to be sent for structural recalibration. The prosecutor remained under medical observation for auditory trauma. Dave Miller was acquitted on a technicality, as the primary evidence, the prosecutor's testimony, could not be presented, but he was banned from singing in public spaces within a 10-parsec radius. Judge Shimmer, once restored to full function, filed a formal petition with the Galactic Judicial Council requesting enhanced protective measures when handling human cases, particularly those involving sound and unpredictable emotional expressions. The Galactic Judicial Council took these incidents seriously. After reviewing the available data, they issued Directive 7B, supplementary precautionary measures for proceedings involving Homo sapiens. The directive mandated the installation of sound shields, psychological air filters, and emotional dampening fields in any courtroom where humans would be present. These measures were put to the test sooner than expected. A group of Earth tourists faced charges from the CLAC's planetary authorities for sacred space violation and performing dangerous, purposeless bodily motion rituals. The charges stemmed from what the humans insisted was a spontaneous beach volleyball game in what turned out to be a Claxian, slow-floating meditation zone considered spiritually sacred. The case was assigned to Judge Plorbus, a large-brain jellyfish entity renowned for empathic jurisprudence. The newly mandated protective measures were in place, and the bailiff, a dignified Grithian wearing the ceremonial wig that symbolized their authority, stood at attention. The Earth defense attorney, attempting to demonstrate the harmless nature of the activity in question, requested permission for a brief demonstration. Your Honor, to show that volleyball poses no threat to anyone, I'd like my clients to recreate a simple play right here in the courtroom. Judge Plorbus, protected by the new sound shield and feeling reasonably secure, granted permission. The court will allow a controlled demonstration of this volleyball activity. The lead defendant, Chad, a former college athlete, stepped forward with the volleyball that had been entered into evidence. Your Honor, volleyball is just a game where we hit this softball back and forth over a net. Like this. Chad tossed the ball into the air and executed a powerful spike demonstration. The ball, traveling at unexpected velocity, narrowly missed Judge Plorbus's floating form, hit the newly installed sound shield, ricocheted at an angle no one had calculated, and squarely struck the ceremonial wig off the Grithian bailiff's head. The courtroom froze in horror. Judge Plorbus contracted into a quivering mass, all judicial decorum temporarily abandoned in the face of the projectile that had nearly made contact. The Grithian bailiff, suddenly exposed without their ceremonial headpiece, experienced what in human terms might be called acute ritual nudity. For a Grithian, the ceremonial wig was not merely decorative, but a symbol of authority and position. To be stripped of it in public was beyond humiliating. It was an identity crisis. The bailiff fled the courtroom, leaving judge and defendants without official protection. Chad and his friends received a lenient sentence of local gravity disrespect and were required to attend a course on low-kinetic recreational activities. But the damage to judicial confidence was done. The Galactic Judicial Council recognized that screens and shields were insufficient protection when dealing with humans. They immediately issued Directive 7C. All court proceedings involving Earth humans must include a bailiff equipped with full tactical-grade protective armor, specially trained to deal with unidentified flying objects, sudden kinetic outbursts, and unpredictable sporting behaviors. Enter Bailiff Gronder, standing over 8 feet tall, with a rocky exterior that made his Petrosian heritage immediately apparent. Gronder was the perfect candidate for the newly created position of human case specialist bailiff. His natural stone-like exterior was supplemented with custom energy armor, and he carried an impressive array of non-lethal, but very intimidating, weapons designed to contain any human-generated chaos. Gronder's first day coincided with a relatively minor case, an Earth tourist charged with excessive volumetric emotional expression in a galactic library. In human terms, she had laughed too loudly while reading a comedy datapad. As the defendant entered the courtroom, Gronder immediately positioned himself between the human and the nervous librarian who had filed the complaint. His massive armored form cast a shadow over the proceedings, and the message was clear. Any unexpected human behaviors would be promptly contained. Judge Zrill, a normally anxious methane breather who had initially refused the case, appeared noticeably more relaxed behind Gronder's imposing presence. The trial proceeded without incident, though the defendant's occasional smiles caused Gronder to shift his weight into a more defensive stance. Over the following months, Gronder became an essential fixture in human-related cases throughout the Xylos 9 judicial system. When an Earth artist was charged with using psychologically destabilizing colors in a multi-species exhibition space, Gronder activated his personal anti-glare shield to protect the judge from the allegedly harmful pigments. During a case involving an Earth chef accused of introducing spicy chili to a species that exclusively consumed bland foods, Gronder stood ready with a specialized chemical fire extinguisher, prepared for any demonstration that might trigger a physiological reaction in the plaintiffs. As time passed, something unexpected happened. Gronder, through constant exposure to human defendants, began developing an intuitive understanding of their behavior patterns. What appeared to other species as random chaos slowly revealed itself to Gronder as a strange but somewhat predictable form of expression. When a human female was acquitted of charges related to excessive gravitational impact during locomotion, essentially walking too heavily near sensitive equipment, she spontaneously moved to hug the judge in gratitude. Gronder, anticipating this typical human reaction, smoothly intercepted the defendant before she could make contact with the gelatinous magistrate, who would have experienced the embrace as a partial absorption. Physical gratitude expressions must be directed toward non-judicial entities, Gronder explained, gently but firmly redirecting the woman toward her attorney, who was better prepared for human contact. The judges, while still wary of human unpredictability, began to feel significantly safer behind Gronder's armored presence. They started processing human cases more efficiently, minimizing direct interaction while relying on Gronder as both protector and occasional interpreter of baffling human behaviors. The defendant appears to be leaking ocular fluid, Gronder once murmured to a concerned judge. This is not a biological attack, but rather an expression of emotional relief at your ruling. No defensive measures required. This growing, if reluctant, understanding would prove crucial in the most complex human case yet to reach the Xylos 9 courts. Earth diplomat Marshall Stevens stood accused of violating a complex treaty by presenting an inappropriate gift to the representatives of the Xanthi Cooperative. The gift in question, a plush cat toy, had thrown the Xanthi into a societal crisis, as their species viewed domesticated animal representations as symbols of biological enslavement, a practice they had abolished centuries ago. The case was particularly delicate as it threatened a critical trade agreement between Earth and 7 non-human civilizations. Judge Vorlex, a multi-mind collective entity, presided with visible trepidation despite Gronder's reassuring presence. As the proceedings began, it became clear that the fundamental issue was one of cultural misunderstanding. Stevens had intended the gift as a gesture of friendship, completely unaware of its catastrophic implications for Xanthi cultural sensibilities. During a tense cross-examination, the Xanthi representative demanded to know if Stevens was deliberately insulting their civilization by promoting biological subjugation. Stevens, visibly distressed, attempted to explain. Where I come from, soft animal toys are given to children as companions. They represent comfort and friendship, not enslavement. I was trying to show that Earth values the nurturing relationship we hope to build with the Xanthi. The translation matrix struggled to convey these concepts across the vast cultural divide. The Xanthi representative's color patterns indicated deepening skepticism and offense. At a crucial moment, Gronder stepped forward, an unprecedented action for a bailiff. Request permission to provide contextual security information, Your Honor. Judge Vorlex, surprised but curious, granted permission. Based on my extensive observation of human behavioral patterns, Gronder stated, his voice rumbling through his armor speakers, I can confirm that soft replicas of Earth animals serve primarily as comfort objects with significant emotional but non-political meaning. Data suggests humans offer these objects as goodwill gestures across many contexts, regardless of biological or chemical implications to recipients. Gronder continued, in security terms, the gift presents no physical threat. The psychological impact appears to be an unintended result of parallel but non-overlapping cultural frameworks rather than deliberate treaty subversion. The court fell silent, processing this unexpected intervention from the usually stoic bailiff. Judge Vorlex considered for several moments before addressing Stevens. This court acknowledges the absence of malicious intent in your actions. However, ignorance of cultural implications does not negate the impact of your gift on Xanthi societal harmony. Stevens was found technically guilty of treaty violation, but received the minimum penalty, a formal apology and cultural sensitivity training, rather than the severe diplomatic sanctions initially sought by the prosecution. As Stevens was escorted from the courtroom, he paused beside Gronder. "Thank you," he said quietly. "You understood what I was trying to say better than I did." Gronder maintained his professional stance, but offered a slight nod. "Protective duties extend to preventing misunderstanding-based escalation," he replied, before adding in a lower tone. "Perhaps choose books as diplomatic gifts in the future. Fewer biological implications." Months later, in the private chambers of the Galactic Judicial Council, a significant meeting was underway. Holographic displays showed designs for upgraded armor for all bailiffs handling Earth cases. Another screen displayed the outline for an entirely separate legal code, specifically designed to address the complexities and apparent illogicalities of human behavior. "The dual protocol system is resource-intensive," acknowledged Chief Administrator Zell, "but necessary given the increasing frequency of human interaction with galactic judicial systems. We must adapt our processes to accommodate their unique approach to reality." Senior Judge Kthar, fully recovered from the birthday party incident but forever changed by it, added, "Logical frameworks that serve the rest of galactic civilization simply collapse when applied to humans. They operate on principles that defy standard categorization. Yet their intentions are rarely malicious," noted Judge Plorbus, who had eventually returned to duty after extensive therapy following the volleyball incident. "They simply exist at a different frequency of behavior than we do, which is precisely why specialized protective measures remain essential," concluded Administrator Zell. "Bailiff armor upgrades will proceed as planned, and all judges maintain the right to refuse human cases without an appropriately equipped bailiff present." The meeting adjourned with unanimous agreement. It wasn't that they disliked humans or considered them inherently dangerous. The judges had simply learned that galactic justice required a solid physical buffer to withstand the unpredictability of Earth's representatives. Meanwhile, in his private quarters, Bailiff Gronder sat before his personal data screen. His massive, armored form looked almost comical hunched over the relatively small device. On the screen played a tutorial titled, "Understanding Human Memes," a comprehensive guide to digital emotional expression. Gronder watched with intense concentration, occasionally making notes in his security log. If he was to effectively protect the court from human unpredictability, he reasoned he needed to understand all forms of their communication, even the most chaotic and illogical ones. As a particularly baffling cat meme appeared on screen, Gronder's stony face remained impassive, but he dutifully recorded in his notes. Humor derived from incongruity between feline dignity and spelling errors. Potential courtroom disruption level: moderate to severe if displayed during proceedings. Containment protocol: immediate screen deactivation and light-based distraction techniques. He paused, then added a personal observation, strangely compelling despite lack of logical structure. Further study warranted. Throughout the galaxies, judges continued to refuse human cases without armored bailiffs. Yet beneath the elaborate precautions and protective protocols lay a grudging recognition. Humans, for all their chaotic energy and bewildering customs, were becoming an inescapable part of the galactic community. Justice would adapt, even if it required reinforced armor to do so. The solution wasn't perfect, but it worked most of the time. And in the rare instances when human unpredictability broke through even Gronder's defenses, well, those cases became the stuff of judicial legend, whispered about in judges' chambers throughout the cosmos, each retelling growing slightly more outlandish than the last, just like humans themselves.